morning. My name is Brittany Liscord, and I'm an educator at the Children's Museum and Theater of Maine. And I'm very honored to be joining you on this special day where we honor mothers in our life. So I hope you have some time to spend with your mom and celebrate. And in honor of that celebration, I thought we could do some cooking in the kitchen today. So today we are going to be going on a cooking adventure and making some muffins. So this Sunday, as with all of our Sundays in the kitchen, is sponsored by Hood Milk. So thank you, Hood, for sponsoring these cooking programs. It's definitely a bright spot in my day when I get to see all the other families that I usually get to see at the Children's Museum and Theater of Maine. So these adventure muffins are perfect for this time of really any time, but could be great when we're not getting to the supermarket as often, or we need to be a little more creative using what we have in our cupboards or our pantry. It's also a great recipe to be inventive and be a scientist. And we're gonna talk about what role ingredients play as we cook a muffin. So if you would like to be a scientist today and be creative and inventive, come along and pick up some ingredients. And if you want to have a leading role in this adventure, let me know what ingredients you think we should add to our muffins this morning. All right, so let's get started. We're gonna bring out our big bowl here, big glass bowl, and the first thing we're gonna add is our flour. You can use a grain flour, like a wheat, like this, like a wheat flour. I found a buckwheat flour that's from Maine, so it's local. I've never used it before, but I thought it would be really fun to try. If you can't find a flour, you could always use oats too. And if you wanted to make it gluten-free, use an almond flour. So we need 2 cups of flour for our adventure muffins. Since I've never used buckwheat before, I decided to try it. I'm gonna do 1 cup. I'm gonna scoop it in here. Here we go. I'm gonna plop it in. 1 cup of buckwheat flour. This is and it looks pretty similar to regular flour. Wash my hands, I'll just let you see. Yeah, it's pretty much like a white, finely sifted flour. All right, so we got 1 cup of buckwheat. We need 2 cups of our flour. So we're gonna put 1 cup, I'm gonna put 1 cup of our regular flour in here. If you use a grain flour, like a white or a whole wheat flour, the muffins are gonna have a cakier texture. If you use a nut flour, like an almond flour, they're gonna be a little more eggy and a little custardy. And there's a scientific reason for that. All right, here's my 1 cup of other flour. So inside a flour, like white flour or wheat flour, there are little tiny molecules called proteins. And when those proteins are mixed with a liquid, they get stretched out and they form gluten. And gluten is what gives a cakey texture. And it also is what gives some things like baked goods tough texture if there's too much gluten. So I'm just gonna whisk up our flours here. And I'm gonna use these in a nice dry bowl. All right, the next thing we need to add to our flours are the leavening agents. The ingredients that are gonna make our muffins go whoop and poof up. So these are minerals, like the ones in baking powder and baking soda. So we're gonna use here's our teaspoons. So we're gonna I'm gonna find my 1 teaspoon, which is this one right here. And we're gonna find the baking powder. That's this one. So baking powder is actually a mix of an acid and a base. So I'm gonna scoop it in. And baking powder is a nice thing to practice scooping in the kitchen. Sometimes I try a few times to get it right because we can slide it right on the top here. So 1 teaspoon, into our big bowl. And then we're gonna add a half teaspoon. So we found our half the size. Baking is such a fun way to do math too. So 1.5 teaspoons of our baking powder. We're gonna add just a little more leavening agent by adding a half a teaspoon of baking soda. And I'm gonna scoop it right in. And just like our baking powder, it's fun to practice scraping it on the top. If you're cooking with kids in your family, that's a fun thing to practice. And when you see it's nice and level means it's flat on the edge, then it's ready to dump in. And sometimes this is a fun thing to do, tap it. Tapping on the edge, make sure all of what was inside that little scoop comes out. Okay, so these are our leavening agents, our acids and our bases that are going to mix with a liquid, and it actually makes carbon dioxide, and that's bubbles. So again, that's what's gonna make our muffins go whoop and a little big. The last thing we're gonna add to this bowl is some salt. And we're just gonna do a 1/4 teaspoon. So here is our half teaspoon, and our 1/4 teaspoon gets even smaller. So we're gonna do a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm gonna pour it right in here. What? A little extra, that's okay. So in goes our salt. So I wonder, I was curious. I actually had never really known where baking soda and baking powder came from, but salt and baking soda and baking powder are all made up of minerals that are mined from the ground. There's actually a huge mineral mine out in Wyoming, just in case you're interested. All right, I'm gonna mix up our dry ingredients right here. I'm gonna whisk them right up. We've got our, if you're just joining us, we are making adventure muffins this morning. So we chose some flours. I used what I had on hand, but you can use any sort of flour that you have on hand. We added some minerals, baking soda, baking powder, and salt. And we are going to move on to the rest of our adventure making muffins. I'm going to start a bowl for my wet ingredients. We talked briefly about the proteins that form and begin to strengthen when you mix flour with a liquid. So to keep those gluten molecules from forming, we're gonna mix our wet ingredients, our liquid ingredients in this bowl. So we need 1/4 cup of sweet. So 1/4 cup, it's about that much. We have lots of options for sweet. Are you ready? These are all good sweet options. Sweet are things like sugar. So it could be honey, which bees make, maple syrup, which trees make. We've got, you can use things like dates are really sweet. These come from trees too. You could also use granulated sugar like brown sugar or white sugar, which comes from sugar cane. Any thoughts about what you would like to use today? What sugar should we use? This is a choose your own adventure muffin. You could use anything you have on hand, any sweet. Maybe if you wanted to be really adventurous, you could use a different type of fruit like a banana. Well, I got a special request from the mother in my life today that she thought it would be fun to try maple syrup. So I'm gonna do some maple syrup. So I'm gonna bring actually out my liquid measurement since this one is a liquid. And hopefully we have enough here. And we're gonna do 3/4 cup. So I'm gonna fill it up to this line right there. All right, I'm gonna watch for me. Here we go. Oh. Oh. I think we need a little more sweet. We're a little short. What should we use? Maybe a little honey? Let's try some honey. So we'll do a mixture of sweet. That's okay too. We'll do some maple syrup and honey. Very decadent. Only the most decadent for moms today. That's for sure. So I'm gonna use, my honey is a little bit hardened, but it's okay. Sometimes what happens for crystallized honey, and if you want to rejuvenate your honey, you can always just stick it in the microwave. And sometimes we play around with using less sugars. So if you want to play around and use less sugars, you can always experiment. this is really your recipe, and it's important to use what you're excited to use and use what you have on hand and be creative and think about the role that different foods play. All right. So this is getting to be about, it's almost a half a cup, which is a little less than the recipe called for, but I think that's okay to use a little less sweet, don't you? That way we have a little more honey for later. All right. So yeah, you use what you feel comfortable with. It's about making it simple and easy. All right, so that's about a half a cup of sweet. If you wanted to put another quarter cup, you certainly could. Got some maple syrup and some honey. I'm gonna put it right into our bowl and move right on to our moist maker. So baked goods need to have some sort of moistness and stay wet. So you can use something to make your muffins moist. This could be like so many things. Ricotta, yogurt, sour cream, shredded zucchini. I didn't have any of those on hand. What I did have is a can of pumpkin. So I have just canned pumpkin here, and I'm going to put 3 quarters cup of pumpkin right in. So put that right into our moisture maker. And then lastly, we need 3/4 cup of liquid. I'm going to use milk today, just cow's milk, but you could definitely use almond milk, water, whatever kind of liquid that you felt like using. So once again, I'm going to fill right up to 3/4, which if you want to watch, let me see, is this line right there. All right, here we go. I'm going to fill it up. Whoop. Right there, yeah, almost. 3/4 cup, perfect. I'm going to put that right into our wet. So we've got some sweet, some moist maker, a nice liquid, and then, thank you, milk. Milk is good. Thank you, hood. Okay, lastly, we need our fat. So I've got 2 tablespoons of butter here. If you wanted to use coconut oil or some olive oil, that's just fine too. I'm gonna spoon this right in. I softened it up, make it easier to stir. There goes our butter. Excellent. We need 2 eggs. So we're gonna, maybe do you like to crack eggs? It's a good thing to practice. Crack right on the edge. Separate it with our fingers. And then we've got our yolk and our white right inside. Whoop, there it goes. And we've got our eggs ready for our compost. 1 egg. And here's the other one. Crack, crack, crack. Put our thumbs in. Open it right up. 2 eggs. Our yolk and our white. Full of nutrients. Give those a quick whisk. Great. And into our wet. Okay, that's everything. We have our flour, our rising agents, our sweet, our moist maker, our liquid, our fat, our 2 eggs, and the only thing, if you want to add something else, is kind of like a stir-in. So I've had some frozen blueberries, so I thought those might be fun to add. So I'm going to add everything in our bowls together. So give a quick stir to my liquids. Joop, 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 joop. So when you stir, when we're at the museum, we talk about 2 hands. We have 1 hand holding the bowl, 1 hand holding the spoon. And if you stir slowly, usually the ingredients stay in the bowl. If you stir super fast, it might get a little wild. But, you know, it's all an experiment. You could try it out. Here we go. We're going to add everything together. Our wet bowl going into our dry bowl, and then we'll add our blueberries. There's just so many creative things you could do with this recipe. All sorts of things. Great, all done. left we'll have to do is put it in our muffin tin. So when I was trying this recipe out earlier, I made a really different type of muffin. I used only oats, so my muffin was gluten-free. For my moist maker, I used ricotta instead of pumpkin. And for my sweet, I used honey. And for my liquid, I used a little bit of cream and a little bit of milk. And they turned out absolutely delicious. So I'm so excited to see what this different adventure recipe turns out like. And there is an adventure roadmap right in the comments for today. So take a look at that if you would like to do some adventuring in your own kitchen. This is a great texture for the batter. You can see it's kind of sticks to the spoon. If it's too liquidy and doesn't stick, you'll probably want to add a little more flour. And if it's too too hard and doesn't fall at all, you might want to add a little more liquid. This looks pretty good. So I'm going to spoon this right into my muffin tins. And then I'm going to heat my oven to 325. And my muffins tins are greased. I love to grease them using the inside, sometimes on butter, if you eat butter. There's the wrapper, and I love to grease them just by reusing the wrapper and going like that. So my muffin tins are greased. I'm going to scoop in my batter into my muffins. I'm going to heat them in the oven the oven's going to be 325, probably for about 20 minutes until they get brown. And then there'll be delicious muffins to share with my mom and my family today. And when they come out, depending on what you use, they're going to look a little different. This is a muffin that I made earlier this week. It's a little flat, and if I break it up, let's see what it looks like inside. Yeah, it's got a nice muffiny texture. This was the one I used with all oats and ricotta and honey. So you never know. You can use lots of different muffins, or lots of different ingredients rather, to make many different kind of muffins. Experiment. See what you like. See what ingredients work well to achieve your favorite textures or your favorite flavors. This is fun. This is science and math. So get cooking in your kitchen today and spread lots of love to all the mothers in your life. So thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye.